You are watching
Don't get
Xirtus.
me started on Westworld.
Okay, well, it's just
Well,
I'm
no,
just
I think
pointing out
I think
that
we're
the guy.
leading
Yeah,
there with anti-humanism, though, right? Because
yeah.
the thing
I
is, we're
just
in a very anti-humanist age right now. There's got this post-humanism. So many people are eager to die and be transmuted, and I think it is
dude,
because of media like that. You know.
Well,
talk about.
I have to sneak in one last Bohemian Grove note in here too, because Batman 493, which was written by Doug Moench, has a direct
Mensch.
reference
Mensch.
to Mensch, a direct reference to Bohemian Grove, Iran-Contra, and the JFK assassination in the background of one of those panels. And I was
Well,
always
good
like,
on him.
that's such a
Dude,
specific reference.
big book of conspiracies. Have you ever seen that? Go online and see if you can find that.
I've actually got it in my bookshelf behind me.
Yeah, I invited Doug Mensch out to Esalen my second year out there.
Ooh.
He's a trip. He's a trip. He's like an old hippie. But he's like a curmudgeon too. Yeah, everybody needs to get that. That book blew my brains out when I got that. What is that? Like 94, 95? That book was foundational for me.
I wish that they had, like the Green Arrow, Green Lantern series for Batman. I feel like if Batman was trying to stop
Like the
a,
reformist.
yeah, like someone needed to come in and teach Batman that he was helping fat cats. If he just went through that in the 70s, it would have changed his character a lot.
Hey,
But get
yeah.
back to Doug Mensch just one second. Doug Mensch was
Sure.
doing like MK Ultra stuff back in the 70s. I mean, Doug Mensch was like really super cutting edge. He did this Planet of the Apes comic book series. Like he just threw everything in.
Oh shit, that's
Yeah, it
so
was
good.
crazy.
I have those.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Oh
so
my
go ahead.
God.
I'm sorry. I needed to
No.
interject.
Thank you. Yeah. I didn't realize that
Yeah, he
was.
did.
Yeah.
He also didn't he do the Lord of the Ultra Realm, which is Ultra Realm is pretty crazy, right? Like this, I think he had a pretty interesting kind of like Dreamtime.
Oh, this is cool. I never
Narrative.
even heard of this. It almost was like Domino on the bottom right
Do you
there.
want to hear a crazy story that Doug Mensch told us?
Yes.
So he was doing that Planet of the Apes. Yeah, there he is. He was doing the Planet of the Apes. I love that guy. He's such a character. He was doing this Planet of the Apes comic book, and it was this story like he did this thing where like the apes were sort of like the Ku Klux Klan, and they were breaking
Mhm.
into the humans' houses and everything like that. And he was writing a page where these apes had broken into these humans' houses and had this woman at gunpoint. They were in masks and everything. And he's typing, and he hears his wife like really quiet say, "Doug, Doug," right? Oh, there goes my camera again. And it turns out that two guys had broken into his house and had a gun to his wife's head as he's typing this story out. I mean, it doesn't get heavier than that. You with me?
Where does it go from there?
Where did you go from there? Yeah, what? That's
I don't
crazy.
remember the rest of the story. It was
And then he
15
threw
years
the
ago.
typewriter. He threw the typewriter.
This is a Mighty Boosh bit where you like have us all,
I think
standing on
the
edge. What do
situation
you got?
kind of resolved itself. I think the situation kind of resolved itself. But that is like, talk about freaky, where he's writing this story about like these two guys breaking into these people's houses, and
Oh,
the same
God.
thing happened to him. And they were both wearing masks too.
Wow. So that's the thing with Killing Joke where those guys shoot up the theater. They come from behind the screen, right? So like that's like in the original comic book of the Killing Joke. That's why when they made a movie out of the Killing Joke, I was like, oh shit, are they gonna include the theater shoot up? But
I remember the amusement park. I don't remember the
should I
theater,
just point out that how weird it is that the guy who was in charge of putting the giant glowing Aurora sign in the third Batman movie was actually a blood relative of Aleister Crowley.
That's
Did I just acknowledge that that's freaking weird?
But again, with the
That's
whole
weird,
Silicon
man.
Valley
That's
millionaires,
pretty
you're
weird.
gonna. I mean, again, if it was a Silicon Valley millionaire, I'd pay extra for that. So I feel like again, the
There you go.
probability of these things are way higher because people want them to happen. But
Right.
also on that point, like so, controlling your universe, is he tapping into something that's going to happen? Is he manifesting it by making it happen? Can he type a solution and then that happen right afterwards in real life in his room?
Hey! Sync doesn't kill people. People kill people. Come on.
I know, but no,
I don't even think that's a sync. I think that's a straight up psi. That's
Mm.
straight up clairvoyance or something. I don't know.
Could go either way for me. I don't know.
Well, I remember though, one of the things also that always was curious was during like the height of this like whatever let's call it the Synchromystic Purge, right? There was a period where groups were indexed when things kind of changed and people were disconnected. I feel like a big part of that was our concern that we could impact the world so much that it wasn't always positive. That we might have negative synchromystic effects because we're trained. Do you think that that's a concern that you ever
I
shared?
had somebody on my blog say that to me one time. I mean, this is back in the day. Say, like, you know, something was going on. I even forget what it was, but it was some big thing. And it was when I was updating, you know, constantly. And I had people like 10 or 20 people commenting, you know, when it was a real community. And it was just like a big string of insane synchromysticism. But it was some sort of tragedy or something. And this woman was like, you know, you're doing this, you're causing this by pointing this out and getting this whole process going with the syncs and stuff. You know, you're driving this. And I thought, well, that's kind of schizophrenic thing to say. But I mean, you know, who knows? I mean, I do a lot of work on this private blog, and I just made this huge breakthrough now, and I won't bore you with the details, but I have often wondered if is this like some sort of Lathe of Heaven kind of deal, you know? you know the story Lathe of Heaven, where the guy dreams something and it happens in real life the next day. Ursula K. Le Guin's story. If you haven't read it, read it. But there's also a really good TV movie version of it from 1980.
Are we going to blame Cassandra for the fall of Rome?
Well, but you know, it's like, but people do that. It's like, you know, the whole idea of blame the messenger.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think a lot of it just has to do with, you know, people who can foresee things. And I'm not saying this for myself, by the way, but, you know, a prophet is never welcome in his hometown and all this kind of thing, you know, blame the messenger. And, you know, we would burn our prophets and our seers as witches and so on. I mean, it's just human nature because we're afraid of the unknown. Mm. And, you know, when somebody is tapped into that power, I mean, people are just going to assume that it's causative. You know, and I've seen this over and over again, and it's something that I kind of have to resist. You know, like some of the more, I don't want to say like not quite as elevated sort of conspiracy types, where everything, you know, has to have this causative source.
Sure.
And they can't deal with the fact that doesn't always happen that way. You know, that the things. There, you know, people go, what is synchronicity? Synchronicity to me is a force of nature, like literally a force of nature. You know, it's part of the program. It's part of the tableau. It's part of what we are living in around us. And I think what's happening now is that I think it's accelerating. And I think because the more you notice it, it notices you noticing it, and it reacts. I mean, synchronicity can really mess with your head. You know, you're talking about my book. One of the reasons I wrote that book is that I want people to be able to stay sane when doing sync work. And I wanted to, you know, like, you need to just I'm going to put this here, I'm going to put this here, I'm going to put this here. This is this, and this is this. Because I've seen people, particularly recently in the past year or so, like flame out. Like they just go. Their brains are gone, man. I mean, they just go over the edge, go over the cliff, because synchronicity will do that to you. It will, if you're not careful. I mean, it's literally playing with fire, and I don't say that lightly.
When you talk about Gematria, for example, like, I have to admit, I'm kind of a esoteric snob in a way or something, because if I'm going to be honest, like, my experience or my approach to Gematria is much different than what I see from a lot of people, including just talking about like tarot or something. Like tarot, if you're talking about like a tarot reading, like, I would never treat a tarot reading as fortune telling, for example. Like, my treatment of it would be more like, I'm going to do psychoanalysis. I'm going to psychoanalyze myself. And I'm going to use this as kind of like a mechanism to reflect something back for my own processing and to understand things in my own, you know, intuitive way. And so, like, and then a lot of my study would go into it with coming from that place. Yet at the same time, like, but if somebody was going to say, well, what do you think of, you know, of tarot reading in general, like what I see about it's like astrology or something, you go to the newspaper and somebody's telling you their interpretation of the astrological signs is much different than in your life if you were following the trines, sextiles, conjunctions, and squares with the moon as they occurred on a day-by-day basis, and we're keeping track of what just things that may reoccur at those times and how what they might be connected to, and just like all those levels of self-reflection. And
yeah,
so
I'm like Jung. I see astrology in the context of synchronicity.
Sure, but in like with Gematria, it's like if you look at like the roots of language, like people were speaking in math. That's a really profound point. Like that and their relationship to language was so radically different than anything we have any context for today. And so when we're doing treatments of like ancient texts, and we're not considering that also that it's freaking musical, that it's like, you know what I mean? Like if you're talking about like the Odyssey or the Torah, it's like, or the Upanishads or all these ancient texts, you'll see that and so it's also that is itself as fundamental a part of the communication as the mathematical side of that you know, Aleph is one, like that's just how it is, like, you know, like people, and you can see that evidence, like you can prove that like mathematically, like when you look at ancient texts, like people have been able to work, oh, we'll take Moby Dick and give it the same treatment and see what comes out of it. You're going to find things because that's the nature of it. If you play the freaking radio with the TV on mute, you know, things will happen. You'll be like, oh, isn't that interesting? What fascinates me is when it crosses a certain line that's undeniable, and like a group can recognize it, and that's like recording it. Because I could see the same thing in a leaf if I look deeply enough into the leaf. You know what I mean? That's how my rabbis put it, actually, when he's like, the way I am with media, he's like, you know, you could find the same thing in a leaf. And I'm like, yeah, I get that, but this is a way to document it that you can translate it and share that with people. Be like, look what happens, and, you know. But anyway, yeah, it's just it's a very layered topic, you know, like Gematria or something like that, and the directions I've seen some people go with it, it does get kind of nutty sometimes, you know.
There's just way too much bad examples of it around, and I just really became very reactive to just the way people would torture language to fit the equation. It really bothered me. You know, it's like, hey, you know, Donald Trump is 2017, but also 3 dog house, you know, phone, chocolate. That's 2017 too. It's like, that's got to mean something. You know, it just got to be, you know, like the way people would just try to fit the round peg in the square hole.
But then you find out that PETA is stealing people's dogs, you know? I don't know.
Well, I've heard this being referred to as clanging. Clanging is something that I guess people with extreme schizophrenia have, where they'll just like focus on a certain sound and then just start making other sounds sound like that sound. It almost feels like a mental Gematria-ish version of clanging.
Wow, is that why I like the music I do? Thanks, Thomas. Thanks.
Well, I'm always like, leave it to the experts, you know? If you're going to do something of any nature in divination or whatever, you've got to do it right, and you've got to not only dedicate yourself to doing it right, but be prepared for when it goes wrong, because it will.